it's 2 minutes past, so I'll kick off and we'll start the session formally. So welcome everybody to this is our last iPEN free webinar for the year. It won't be the last ever. We're in the process of trying to get some things set up for next year. And if anyone has any ideas or people that you might like to hear from, please get in touch. Welcome any thoughts and suggestions, or if you think there's some great folks out there who we could all benefit from hearing from. But today we're going to be hearing from Lee Day and Trevor James from Ag Research about the use of program logics. We've said for more useful project reporting, but that's a fairly loose framework. It's really the use and application of program logics to support a bunch of sort of project functions. So I will open with a karakia and then and I'll hand over to each of them respectively. Kia hora, te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huria he mā tātou e te rangi nei, aroha atu aroha mai, tātou e a tātou katoa. Hui e tai ki e. All right, well, warm and very, and lots of gratitude to both Lee and Trevor for joining us. Trevor is joining us from a field days, so he's joining us on his phone. So what we've actually done for him is we pre-recorded a bit of a chat earlier this week. And then we have got Lee here joining us to speak in person. But Trevor's going to stay on the line, so if you've got any questions for him, you'll be able to do that. So seeing as we've got his ready to go, what I'll do is I will share that with you all. Now, one little thing, I'll just need to stop sharing for a moment. All right, thanks, Trevor. So yeah, really appreciate you joining this free webinar on iPEN's behalf. Can you just really briefly introduce yourself? Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And then maybe just give me a really quick kind of pencil sketch of what the herbicide resistance program that we're going to be sort of focusing in on for the most part for our chat.
All right, thanks, Cara. That's a big expectation to summarise 48 years of research into a very two-sentence introduction. So, yeah, I'm Trevor James. I'm a senior scientist with Ag Research, and I've been working at Ruakura in Hamilton in one form or another for 48 years working on weeds. And I won't go into more detail because then it really will take up the rest of the webinar.
Yeah, don't get me started, because as we talk, I look out the window and look at the weeds in my garden, and yeah, we really could segue. And so tell me about the herbicide resistance program. What point are you at? Where's the funding come from? All of that kind of thing.
The herbicide resistance has been with us in New Zealand at least since 1979, when I was a party to the first resistant weed that we discovered in New Zealand. And since then, we have been trying to encourage farmers and growers to avoid practices which lead to the evolution of herbicide resistance. We have been working more lately with the Foundation for Arable Research in this area until finally they came to us and say, hey, look, we are really worried about this. It's a major problem. And that started us looking at MBIE for funding, because that was the sort of money we were going to need. After 3 attempts, we were finally successful, with Foundation for Arable Research as a main backer, but a lot of other stakeholders were involved as well. And so 4 years ago, we started this program on looking at herbicide resistance. What causes it? Where is it? How much is it? What can we do about it? Anything that we could constructively do to help farmers.
Okay. And this particular, so it's Endeavour funding, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So then, and so you have with this program, you've developed a program logic, and off the back of that, you've got a monitoring and evaluation plan that you've built off the back of the program logic. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Cool. Okay. And when did you do the program logic? At what stage? Was that in the bidding phase or right kind of near the start?
It was near the start. Helen Percy, who at the time is a colleague up here in Hamilton, we have done this before on lesser programs, and so I was keen, and Helen was keen to look at it in this context. It is what it says it is. It's logic, and it really helps you to identify some key things. So we have a lot of stakeholders. Who is going to do what? How was that going to be measured? How was that going to be reported? All these things were questions which we seriously needed to think about. They're all components of a successful MB bid, outcomes, how the world's going to change, all part and parcel of it.
Now, devil's advocate, or what we see happen sometimes, is program logics get developed and people get excited, and you get all the various people in the room. You kind of get your heads all together on one page, and then you go, oh right, okay, now let's crack on with the work, and the program logic goes into a drawer, and in some cases gets altogether forgotten about, or not really visited. That's been a bit of a different experience for you because you've also created a monitoring and evaluation plan. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about, why did you want to do that? Why did you see that as a useful, I don't want to call it an add-on, but an extension, a sort of an extension of the program logic process?
Yeah, that's really good question, but I will go back one step. And yes, our little thing on program logic did get shoved in a drawer, but that's neither here nor there really, because it was so integral in writing the program that the essence of it was already in the program. And when we follow the MB program, we're then automatically referring or doing what we said we would do. So it kind of didn't matter that it got put in the drawer. And as I had to do, go back to Helen and say, where's a copy of it? Several years later, because it was there, and it was actually submitted to MB as well as proof that we had thought about it and it was part of the development of the program. So it was integrated into the program, and therefore, but we did revisit it again as we discussed previously, after 4 years of the program. So we could just really say, this is what we said we were going to do. Have we done it? Can we measure it? Who's going to measure it? And so that's all part and parcel of it. Now, the second part of your question was about the communication.
The monitoring and evaluation plan.
Monitoring and evaluation, that's right. Because there's a communication plan came out of it as well, and a monitoring and evaluation. And here, this was really important when we were sitting with stakeholders to evaluate what they could do and what expertise they brought to the project, to the program. Okay, because stakeholders are there for a reason, and they are actually stakeholders, part and parcel of the program. So what can you do? What are you willing to do? What's part of the thing? You've promised us some cash funding, and you promised us some in-kind funding. So what might that in-kind look like? And often that was part of the evaluation. Can you do a survey? Can you talk? You were the ones that have got the list of farmers. You are the ones that have got all the names. You are the ones that present most of the field days. Can we do a survey at a field day and get people to fill it in and win an ice cream at the end of it or something? Can we talk to this group? What's the feedback coming through? So there's where the stakeholders have a very, very important role, but they're guided by what we talked about at the beginning as their commitment. Okay, we will do this. This is our communication. This is what, and then we get to the end. Well, you promised you would do this sort of thing. We usually don't need to do that, but with such a range of stakeholders, Foundation for Arable Research, Brigado Research Institute, which is with the wine industry, Hort NZ, all these places, they have a different group of people. They have different in-house communications and publications that we can use and rely on. So, yeah.
Okay.
Possibly rambled too much, but edit that out.
No. And you mentioned the communications plan. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, it's really about what we were going to say, what we would have to say, and how we would say it. At what stage along the program were we expecting to get some results?
Yeah.
And how can we effectively get them out there? How many avenues are there to get information out there? And how do we tackle them? To when we got established and the program looked to be making great success, AgResearch itself came on board mightily and got some stuff out there, but they weren't quite so onto it right at the beginning, and so they've came on a bit later. But then there's all the industry publications that we really wanted to know what can we use, because although we believe herbicide resistance is very important and it is starting to impact in New Zealand in a big way, a simple statistic is 33% of all vineyards in New Zealand have glyphosate-resistant riegrass as a weed. Now, that's not unimportant, but how can we get these messages out there, with some impact?
Yeah.
And, there's the popular press, there's the farming magazines, there's the in-house publications, that FAR put out, the Brigado put out, and that sort of thing. So just lining up all the dominoes, I suppose, and knocking them over one by one.
And so from what I'm hearing you say is the program logic gave you, I suppose, is their logic, right? About, okay, as you were saying, at about this point, we might be seeing things. So sounds like a kind of slightly more structured and maybe focused conversations about what, when, and who. Would that be right?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of that was from part of the logic is the outcomes, short term, mid-term, long term. What were we going to achieve? What have we promised? And part of that comes into MB is we have deliverables. What are those deliverables going to look like? And how will we then use those deliverables to change things, which is what the essence of MB wants, Transformational change is the big key word. So how can we facilitate that transformational change? Our first step is our science, but then that doesn't go anywhere unless we've got a plan and a way forward.
Okay, cool. And the comms plan and the M&E plan that you're talking about, did you develop those near the beginning, or were they kind of products that you actually that you didn't develop until, I don't know, 1 or 2 or 3 years in?
They were developed very early on in the first management planning meetings. So once we got the money, then we decided these things needed doing. So we did the program logic beforehand because that was building the program. Once we had the program, how are we going to meet those goals that we've set ourselves and objectives which we've set ourselves in the program logic? It's what we said would be an outcome. How are we going to achieve that outcome? And so that's when we all sat down. We were down at Lincoln for this. There was about 30 odd people, researchers themselves and stakeholders and other interested parties, all in one room and well facilitated, probably by Helen, I can't remember exactly, but well facilitated where we're going to go and how we're going to do it. So those early plans came out of the logic.
Okay.
which by
So it
that stage
sounds,
was about
yeah,
4 years old, but that doesn't matter.
yeah. And so it sounds to me then, as you're describing it, those plans themselves kind of were integral to the project and the program kind of planning and management. Would that be fair to say?
Integral to delivering anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, and integral to delivering results. So therefore they had to be part of the plan, but they were
Mm,
in the detail that was worked out at the beginning, but after the
mm.
money was approved. So we
Okay.
had broad brush helicopter type stuff
Yeah.
to get funded, and then we had to sit down and nut out the nuts and bolts, who and why and
Okay.
when and that sort of thing, which
Yeah.
is the basis of the more detailed
Okay.
plans.
I'm going to ask you for a little bit of detail in just a second, but to go back to that point, if I was, some people, and I would probably be, may have been one of them 10 or 15 years ago. It's like, oh, I just want to get on with it. We'll do that stuff later. Let's just crack on with the science. That stuff we can maybe do in a year's time or 2 years' time. What wise counsel would you would you say to me about why I should just hold my horses and do that near the start?
My my thing I would sort of rebuke you on is that you've got stakeholders in the program and you've
Right.
just ignored and insulted them. Fairly strong words, okay?
Yeah, yeah,
You've
yeah.
left your stakeholders behind. And
Yeah.
that's a fatal thing to do. And I'm
Okay.
saying those
Yeah.
in fairly strong words. So I'm not
Yeah.
mincing them.
Yeah,
You leave
yeah.
your stakeholders behind at your peril. And so
Okay.
stakeholders are that they want to be involved in the
Yeah.
program. They want to be part of the program.
Yeah.
They need to be, they should be, they are in on the decision making. The whole
Okay.
structure that we worked around this is we have 2 meetings a year with all the stakeholders. They listen to the science, they give feedback, they are part of the program. If we need to do any mid-term or any other direction changes or something crops
Yeah.
up from the research that they want to focus on, they're part and parcel of the decision making and why it's
Yeah.
done. If we go without them, the phrase I want to use isn't polite enough to use here, but it's
Okay.
about something into the wind, okay?
Yep. Yep. Okay. So that kind of I think that's going to answer some of my question around the detail because you've already talked about how you've been using the stakeholders as how can we get feedback on this? How can we use this particular opportunity to gather some information? So it sounds like you've used all of that in a really you know really knitted up way to pull everyone in on the delivery by the sounds of it. And so, and tell me if I'm wrong, but off the back of that, so what I'm also quite keen to understand then is a lot of that information provides some evidence about how you're tracking. And so sometimes I think of like if we use a health analogy, it's like your blood pressure and your heart rate and all of those sorts of things that make you know that things are ticking along okay. But then it's often quite nice to do a bit more of a kind of a whole scale deep dive. And I gather that and that's sort of the role and the differentiation between sort of those monitoring functions versus the more kind of evaluation, which is a bit more deep dive. And you have done sort of a midterm-ish evaluation, which has kind of been a little bit later, thanks COVID. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first thing is, should we be worried about whether on I don't know whether you're right or wrong or anything, because what happened in this program was really,
Mm,
really exciting.
mm.
In that we had our first meeting and we had about 30 or 32 people there. We had our second meeting and we had 37 people. We had our next meeting and we had about 40 people
Oh,
because people wanted to buy into the program as we went along. So not only were we um, keeping our existing initial stakeholders happy
mm,
because we had communication plans, because we had ways of getting the result out there. People were coming into the program as we went
mm.
along, and the program was getting, in terms of stakeholders, no more money, unfortunately, really, or
Yeah.
significant money, but the program was showing its success by people coming in all the time.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is because of the planning, because word of mouth got out there,
Yeah.
because people could see what we were doing. How could people see what we were doing? Because we had things in place right from an early stage, and good engagement with the community via our stakeholders.
Okay. And
Does
building
that
that
answer the
bubble.
question or
Yeah.
not? Or did I go
Yeah.
completely off a
No.
tangent?
Well, you've answered a different question,
Yeah, I
but it's
know.
a
That's
good
the one I know
question.
the answer to.
But I guess what I was interested to hear about was, you're right. Those are good, almost like proxy indicators of success. The fact that more people want to be involved. But one of the other things that, if you've got a program logic that's going to help you figure out, well, what are those really good things we do want to be tracking and checking in on? But then I think you said that you also had like a midpoint evaluation that you were going to do. And that's often the time where people, as you said, bring stakeholders together, get your program logic out, you look at it, you say, okay, how are we tracking? Are we doing better than we expected? Are we doing worse than we expected? What more, is there new things we could do? Kind of a lot more of a reflective process almost. And so I suppose I'm really keen just to understand, if you've gone through that process, what value has that added? Because why would you bother otherwise?
There's two things there. Okay, it's great personally to get the backup and know that you have been a little bit successful. So there's a personal aspect of all this.
Mm-hmm.
You have made an impact in your science and what you've done. So for the last 4 years, I haven't been wasting time with little eight-legged things. And so that's a personal aspect of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Then there is the aspect, okay, this is what we said we would do. Have we done that? Have we actually led to change so that we can say that we have led to change? The other thing is that 5 years in a career is not a terribly long time, and we need more money. And so to get that, we need to first be able to say, look, we have had 5 years of a transformational program. We're worth putting money on again, which isn't exactly the way that MB does things, but it's got to be helpful on your side to know that, this is a successful team that has delivered, and here's the proof.
Cool. Okay. What I'd love to hear from you is, I suppose it's the agony aunt column now. Some people might say, oh, I've tried this before and it was too hard, or maybe they don't understand it, or they're worried about it kind of interfering in the process. Nothing goes smoothly. So my first question is about, are there bits to the use of program logics and developing them and then kind of taking them and using to support kind of communication plans and the M&E plans that you've talked about, that you can say, look, these bits are a bit hard, but stick with it for these reasons. So I suppose that first reflection about, are there things that people might need to prepare themselves for?
I honestly, I've got to say, I haven't a clue where you're coming from, because there's nothing hard about it. At least I found nothing hard about it. Maybe it's because I had excellent mentors. I don't know, but I found nothing hard about it. But if you are going to put a successful program together, list your milestones or deliverables and that sort of thing successfully, cost them out, and have a program that works, then you just need to do this in one form or another. You have
Yeah.
to do it. And
Yeah.
this is as good a structure within which to do it
Mm,
as I've seen. So yes, you can probably get there without doing it, but if you do it this way,
mm,
using the resources that are on hand, there are people to help if you get
mm.
stuck or if you're
Yeah.
wondering what this question means.
Mm,
And also, there's other people can understand it as well because other people
yeah.
have gone through a similar process.
Yeah.
So if you have change or leadership change or something like that,
Mm,
it's not just all in my head or all in
yeah.
hieroglyphics written on the side of a wall. It's
Yeah.
something out there.
Yeah.
If I had a retired at retirement age in the middle of the program or some other time, there's this stuff there to
Mm,
help take over. It's written down, it's documented. This is where we wanted to go. This is where we said we would go. If you follow this plan, we should still get on fine. It's not
yeah.
my plan, it's the program management
Yeah.
team's plan.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the important thing. And it documents then what stage or what other people committed to, which is also very handy because some things are going to change.
Yeah.
We can't start a 5-year program believing that it's going to have the same people in certain positions throughout the program. They
Yeah.
will retire, they will move companies, they will get promoted, they will do something else. The large number of them, but you can't rely on that sort of continuity with,
Yeah.
40 people over that period of time. So to have something documented is
Mm,
really handy,
yeah.
documented in a form that other people can understand
Yeah.
is really handy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that
Cool.
where we wanted to go?
Oh, look, it pleases me knowing to hear you say you didn't find that how difficult. I look, I agree from my own personal experience. So it's nice to hear you say the same thing. But I do also think that you no doubt had some great facilitation along the way. Yeah, and that certainly does help.
Yeah.
We do
So
often
my
say don't
my
go it
word
alone.
my word would be if you are finding it difficult,
Yeah,
definitely it is worth talking to somebody that can help you
yeah,
because the
yeah.
benefits are quite tangible. And
Okay.
so if you look at it and think, what do I do there? What do they mean by that question? If you are at that level, and I
Mm,
might have been at that level when we started kind of co-developing these things with Helen. I think I was a guinea pig there for a while. I might have, thought things like that too. So
yeah,
having been with it for a long time now, it's kind of second nature. So
yeah.
I've used it for more than one program.
And is there any times in your research work that you would say, "Oh no, I'm not going to bother this time," or is it kind of comes with the thinking territory these days?
Uh, well, sometimes you get a bit frustrated, but if you want to write a coherent and logical program,
Mm,
and if you can show your funding body that
mm,
you've thought about it,
mm.
and this is the way that I've thought about it, they are more likely, I think, I don't, it can't be believed because I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's more likely that they're going to say, okay, let's back this one
yeah,
because they have done their homework and it all looks achievable
yeah,
because they have done their homework.
yeah. Okay, cool. Anne Marie, I want to give you one final opportunity because you obviously know the herbicide resistance program uh, in some detail. Is there any other questions or I suppose little areas that you think are worth asking a follow-up that we might not have shed any light on in our chat?
Yeah, there was the process. We started talking about it around so that May, was it May, earlier this year meeting that we had, Trevor, with with everyone that you could bring along, and that was to help with your second to last report.
Yeah.
And the sorts of discussion, I think everyone found, even if it was stuff that you might have already known, everyone found it really great to discuss where you'd got to with each other, not just, write it and read it in a report. So just that sort of taking the time, because it was a good few hours, how you found that helpful for both your reporting and this final year of your program, just kind of having everyone in the room more focused on the outcomes impact discussion and having that dedicated time. Any sort of, I guess, the
What
question
value
would,
did that add?
yeah, because other people who are in that final year might be like, oh, well, why are we going to take a good half day to talk about this? Is it too late? Yeah, so how helpful
Why
you might have
bother?
found that. Yeah.
It's a really good point about why would you, towards the end of a program, we wanted to carry a lot of the stakeholders on into the next program anyway. So in that respect, it was priceless because we wanted to continue engagement with them. We didn't want to shed them. We have to ensure that they believe they're getting value for money and it's worthwhile continuing with this. So that was an opportunity for them to have their say, to give any feedback, to look at what they thought we'd achieve from the point of view of their constituents, stakeholders, whatever. And yeah, it's a difficult question in one respect, Anne-Marie, because we're kind of still working through that. But right now I'm also in the middle of writing another MB application. So those sort of things are not far from my mind because the stakeholders always there. And this reminds me that the stakeholders there. And if I try and go without them, it's pointless. So yeah, we haven't got to the total fruition or outcome of that meeting yet. It was only, when was it? October. That wasn't. Oh no, that was a May meeting, wasn't it? We did it. Sorry, yeah. So May, still less than half a lifetime away. So we're still working through a lot of that, but its value is still to be fully realised. But already, I'm very, very happy that we did it. As an ongoing encouragement. So
yeah. But what I'd like to do now is, we've had Lee waiting patiently. So Lee, I'll let you introduce yourself, but Lee has also, you're, I suppose, part of a cohort that Trevor has also belonged to, being lucky to get that walking alongside support from people like Helen Percy and others. And so what we're going to be doing is, briefly, if you can just introduce yourself, Lee, and then just talk really, if you could maybe just give us a really quick overview of, I suppose, your experience using program logics and the science that you deliver. And then maybe what you might like to do after you sort of introduce this most recent project. I would invite you just to then carry straight on and build on any comments in particular that Trevor has picked up, because I saw you nodding your head and laughing at various points along the way. So rather than me waste time asking you questions, I'd love to give you the floor for a bit. So over to you, Lee. Who are you and what have you been doing with yourself?
Thank you, Cara. Now I'm Lee Day. I'm the sector manager for Food and Fibre International at Ag Research. That's my current role. My previous role was principal scientist in dairy products and processing, and that was very much at that time. And I led and the team submitted the MB Endeavour research program on fermented foods, which is a short title. The long title is called Accelerate the Evolution. step change in food fermentation. So the purposes of the program is around how we can improve the functional traits of microbes for food fermentation purpose without the use of GMO technology. So certainly it's not a direct evolution, indirect applying chemical and physical stresses to be able to, what we call it, fishing out the microbes that we are interested for improving the functional traits of the fermented foods program. So it's kind of a nutshell of the program itself. The program is actually come to the end. So officially we have finished just. We submitted the last report and completed the 5 years of work. So yeah, and I was listening to James's recording there. Certainly, I would say he probably used the program a lot more, program logic a lot more systematically compared with how we used for the 5 years the journey itself. But certainly a lot of learning I can sort of share there. One thing I really agree with James and supported there as well is using the program logic. Program logic isn't a tool. It helps you to get your stakeholders. Often we do have external, commercial partners as part of an MB program. What I would also add on as well, also your collaborators as well, because often research is not delivered just by ag research. If we lead a program, it's delivered by several research partners. We do have a number of research partners in the program. It really helps the whole team come together, focus on what we're trying to do. And I do think that's probably the really key sort of a take-home message, I would say. It is the focus, help us to focus on delivering outcomes and outputs of the program to our users, which is our commercial, external commercial partners, as well as in obligation to our funders as well, which is
yeah.
We did have the help all the way along. We had Helen Percy at the beginning to help us to design to work through the program logic. I would have to say I used it, as I said, quite differently. We certainly did not have the program logic done when we submitted proposal. We did not even think of it at that time. I guess that was 5 years ago. Today, I would encourage everybody who planning to submit MB programs or developing other large SIF research programs, really think about it, use the program logic to help you understanding, what you're trying to deliver at the beginning. We only you had a session which was facilitated by Helen at our very first workshop, if you like, with our stakeholders and collaborators at the very beginning of the journey when we got the funding. It was almost like, we got the funding, now what are we going to do?
Yeah. Cool. And so that, and presumably from an earlier conversation we had, that helped to do many of the same things that Trevor was talking about in terms of just getting everyone on the same page, real clarity and focus about this is what we are doing, this is what we need to deliver, these are the changes that we're looking to see. Now, this session is around reporting, right? But reporting can come in many forms. There's the formal project reporting, but there's also the kind of checking in and reporting back to ourselves and to our stakeholders and things that we do. So how have you found the program logic has been a tool to help with that kind of that accountability and reporting activities, either formally or informally?
I was sort of smiling early on when you were talking about we tend to do program logic right at the beginning because we've been told that we got to do it when we started the program, and then we just put it in the drawer in the cupboard. And we certainly done that. I would have to say we did that for the first couple of years. After we developed program logic, certainly we haven't really sort of came back to look at it, the very first time I thought about it, well, it could be a really useful tool to help us understanding where we are at here, where we're going. It was actually immediately after the COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
And I just went back to look at some of my notes, my slides as well. It was 1st of July. It was when we were trying to think about it. You know, we need to prepare the report to MB. We also need to think about it, where we are. We were at it. I mean, my title was actually where we are at it and what have changed. I mean, 1st of July 2020, all of you would be realized, you know, we just came out of lockdown. And for us, we also had a little bit of double whammy because we were moving majority of our lab from Grasslands to our new building because of lockdown. We did not move in until sort of mid-June. So when I had that meeting with the research teams altogether, was literally 2 weeks after we kind of moved in. And my second point was what would be our primary focuses and outcomes that we aim to achieve. So that's when I thought, well, maybe we should revisit our program logic we did 2.5 years ago at that time. I mean, we did. It was an excellent exercise, and I think it really allowed us start reflecting on the 2 years of a journey we're already been on in this research program, and also start think about it, where we are at it and where we are heading, and are we be able to deliver what we planned to do, and do we really need to change anything as well? The interesting thing was, it was only just a couple of hours meeting with the research teams together. I had a wish that I'd done it with the stakeholders as well at that time.
Yeah.
It was a really good exercise, and also an exercise get everyone refocused back on what we were set to deliver. And we actually concluded at that time, we actually were doing reasonably well, despite all various disruptions and get everyone done and everything. We were actually on track. We were actually on the right track as well. So we actually, collectively made the decision at that time was we're not going to extend our program. We will just continue on the journey we have been on it, and we just need to realize that what we have achieved, what we continue to do, and put the effort into what we continue to do. Yeah.
Now, Lee, you have actually got some little some recognition from MB around your reporting. Is that right for this program?
Yes, we have. We have been from the second year, I think. We have been given the gold rating 3 times now, and the very last one this time as well, we have been given the gold rating. I mean, I can talk about it the second. I mean, we used again this time at the end of the program workshop, which was facilitated by Anne-Marie as well. Again, the learning I have from that was it's just not a tool. It isn't a tool, but it allows the research team as well as external partners all together be able to focus on what we decided for ourselves. It's not me as the program leader decided for this program.
Yeah,
it's all of us as a collective what we decided to do 5 years ago, and how well we actually did deliver those outcomes and outputs and the goals we're aiming to. So in a way, it almost allowing the team to understand their achievement, their hard work for the 5 years, the journey of 5 years. All of us walked together towards that point. And it was really interesting. It was, I mean, we certainly did not ask. As I said, because we use the tools with the research teams a lot more than with the stakeholders altogether. And our external partners, commercial partners, companies, those representatives did say, I wish that actually I've seen this a lot more, reviewed a little bit more, even though they were happy with where we were at it, where we're aiming to achieve, how they come as part of the journey as well. And they actually volunteered themselves writing up a summary in terms of how the program has delivered outputs and outcomes which benefit for them, which we did include it as in the final report as well. I mean, we did not ask them. They volunteered, and they said that they will write an objective feedback to MB altogether. So which is great. Which, I mean, for me, you know, there's a couple of key things here. I mean, apart from what James has already mentioned there, for me, it's very much about getting the teams together and getting the teams actually earning the research program altogether. So everyone earns the research program. And at the end of the journey, we can also celebrate. Everyone feels they have been appreciated and they have been part of this success as well.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I want to just let everyone know if anyone on the call has any questions, either for Lee or for Trevor or for both of them, you're welcome to put them into the chat. So I'll give you a moment to do that if anyone's got anything burning. But while people are composing their thoughts, I've got one more question for you, Lee, which I sort of asked Trevor about. But if you think about what you've learned and how, and the you know, the value proposition, why would you bother? Why would you be wanting to continue to use a program logic as a tool in those different ways that you've described, not only from at the beginning, but through the process? And let's imagine you've got a team together and some of them have never used it before. What would you be saying to them? What's in it for them?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think what it is for them is, as I mentioned earlier on as well, it is about having something you actually understand personally in terms of where you're aiming to. So you set up a couple of goals and a couple of targets, which we're talking about outcomes and our outputs and outcomes. Outputs is quite important often for the researchers, you know, having publications or having new research tools or having something tangible. It's important. It is kind of help you systematically to determine what you want to achieve from a personal level and as well as a team altogether. And I mean, for me, that's probably the most valuable tangible thing I get out of using the program logic. And certainly we, as I said earlier on, we didn't use it for the fermented foods program. Certainly we are now started to use it for designing the new program. And the other thing, as I keep on saying as well, what I found is kind of a little bit side thing. It actually helps the team. Often it's not from one organization, from several organizations. We did that last year with a cohort of us. Some of them never used it before, from universities and other research organizations. Yeah. It's getting a common understanding and allowing us feel we are part of the team. Part of this team, we're moving towards a common goal.
Thanks, Lee. Guy's asked a really good question around, does the method use a governance group with independent chair and an annual planning process? So Guy's from MPI. So I might add one little comment, and then Lee and Trevor might like to just add, I mean, program logics and then how they might be used through the course of a project. They are tools, right? You can use them at different points for related but slightly different things. For someone who also sits in governance roles, not so much in programs, but on organisations, I have found these sorts of things very useful because it helps the governance group have conversations at the right level and keeping us having the conversations at those more strategic sort of the big picture sort of helicopter view conversations, as opposed to getting down in the weeds, which actually, you know, that's not the function of the governance role. It's really about pulling things together. So that's been my experience. Lee, did you use your program logic in that way, or have you seen it used in that way, sort of reporting or talking with sponsors or in that governance sort of scenario?
Not directly. I certainly haven't seen the program logic used with what I call a steering group for MB programs. So we do tend to have a steering group. Governance group are probably similar type of things. But I certainly think it can be as part of a reporting to governance group. I think governance group. Yeah, no, I have seen some. Yeah, I think there was a large program within AgResearch have used a part of it. The bidder have used a part of the bidder program governance group, have used a part of the program logic, not the whole thing as a whole. The projects underneath the projects tends to use the program logic rather than governance group. Certainly information can feed up to the governance group.
Trevor, how about you? Have you seen these used in those sort of formal accountability reporting processes?
Yes, I have. Firstly, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. There's a howling nor'wester now, and I'm in a tent and it's flapping like crazy. So I'll apologise in that, but I think it would be worse if I went outside. Yes, in the herbicide resistance MB program, we had a management group, which is the one we talked about, met every 6 months, and then we had a senior governance group. But the senior governance group basically just looked at the management structure and said, we're all busy. If it all turns to custard or you have a real problem, come to us. Otherwise, we won't hassle you.
Yeah.
And it never turned to custard and they've never hassled me. So that's it. But I'll switch programs and talk about how we used it in the successful Velvet Leaf SFFF program, where we did have an independent governance group led by one of the stakeholders as a chairman, and it was used in that capacity there.
And how did that work, Trevor? How was it used to support that kind of reporting and accountability function to them?
Well, they knew, I mean, as well as the milestones, which if you listen to my first talk, which you've listened to it twice now, you will hear me say that they are based on that. And so they could see, the program logic, they could see the milestones, and they then listened to us reporting to each of those milestones. And if they were happy, we were all happy. If they weren't happy, they said so. Well, they never had to say so. This thing just becomes so definitive. It makes work, makes research, it makes your job easy.
Yeah. Guy, I want to give you the right of a follow-up question if you had one, or has that answered your question?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, it's been interesting listening to this because it's a lot of the, I suppose, the practices we use in SFF Futures, particularly in the programs, sound very similar. And particularly for large ones, our programs often do involve research, but there are other things, may well be other things going on as well. But we've developed over the years, because of the partnership element, I think, and the tension between government and private sector requirements, we've developed governance groups, which are very hands-on. They meet every quarter and management reports to them. And they help to, I guess, keep the program on track. They provide advice, I suppose, and support to the management team. And anyone's familiar with boards and so on will understand all this. And there's an annual planning process, which is an opportunity to really reflect on what's happened in the previous year, and then to look forward. And there may be some changes needed, some slight redirection of resources and so forth. And the governance group really, on recommendations from management, but it's the governance group that really has the ultimate authority, I guess, to do that if there are variations required to the agreement and so on and so forth. It might be a little bit different in a pure research setting, but I'm just reflecting really on our experience and wondering whether those two things I've mentioned are used or would be helpful.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, and actually MPI in the way that it uses, even if its use of program logics is further advanced and and monitoring and evaluation is sort of more formally built in, and yeah, and so really just to kind of reinforce the value, both from it's valuable to a governance group in just the same way as it is when you're building them right from the get-go. It helps you be really clear about, well, what is this thing that we are that we are funding or that we are delivering, and so you can have useful conversations about the right things rather than kind of rambling around in the weeds and getting yourselves off track, because it gives you a bit more of a framework and a structure.
Absolutely. I just want to make one more point, and that's we have something called an outcome logic model, which sounds somewhat similar. Yes, it's the same sort of thing, but it sets up the hierarchies of so on with the outcomes at the end.
That's right.
And actually, that sits in the annual plan and can be revisited, you know, if necessary or modified. But that's really the guiding, the guiding light.
Yeah, Guy, you've highlighted one of the challenges of these things is they get called multiple different things, and in some of the iPEN training, one of the key takeaway messages is don't get hung up on what people are calling it. Check that it's following that process: inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, impacts. But it's the same thing: logic models, program logics, intervention logics, to name but a few. It's 1 o'clock.
Can I just, Cara, can I respond to that?
Please.
In that the program logic, whatever you want to call it, it is a two-edged sword too, because it can work backwards. So if the governing body all of a sudden decides that they want to go in a different direction, whoever is doing the work or doing, whether it's research or something else, they have good grounds whereby they can, you know, argue that, no, this is what we agreed. You have to have really, really good reasons to change. So it is a two-edged sword and very useful as such.
Yeah, and no, you're so right, Trevor, and it holds everyone to account, but in that positive and constructive way. Yeah. Look, I want to, it's 1 minute past 1, so we'd better wrap up, but I want to say another really huge thank you to Lee and to Trevor for joining us and sharing just the little tiniest sliver of your experience using these to help you do good science that has impact. That's why you would bother. And I know, especially at this time of year, it's really busy. And Trevor, you're taking time out from a field day. So thanks once again on behalf of iPEN and everybody. And I hope you don't mind me inviting, if anyone's got any follow-up questions, I'm sure that you won't mind fielding any of them, but also if you can't find their contact details or you want to ask a more general question, get in touch with the iPEN team as well, either myself or Chanel. But otherwise, I want to say a big thanks once again to Lee and Trevor. I want to wish you all a very warm and not too stressful end of the year. Hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and break and have keep safe and have a lovely time with friends and family or whoever you want to spend it with. And we will have more webinars set up starting. We haven't firmed up the dates, but it'll either be late January, early February. We should be kicking off, but we'll be forwarding details once we've got things locked in. But yeah, otherwise, thanks again. Hope that was useful to you all, and hope to see lots of you again next year. Oh, look at there. There's a real field days photo. It's great. Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.